everybody, and welcome to Learning from Smart People. I am your host, Rob Oliver, and my guest today is Brian Wagner. He was blinded at the age of 43 by a genetic condition in his brain. Since then, a portion of his sight has returned, but his vision is better than it's ever been. Brian, thank you so much for joining me on the show.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so let's start right there with what happened.
What happened? So at the age of 43 was when I went blind, but at the age of 10, I noticed that I knew that I had some problems in my brain. Wasn't sure what it was all about, but they discovered that I had a cavernous malformation over the years. And a cavernous malformation, it's a malformed blood vessel. They can form anywhere in your body. Mine just happened to have formed in my brainstem, and it did. And when it formed, it was there for 43 years until it bled so much that it put pressure on the nerves that control my vision. And when it did, the blood started to coagulate and really did damage, irreparable damage to my vision. So even if both of my eyelids were open, both of my eyeballs don't go together, so they don't see one image. They see two images, no matter what. It's rather annoying, but so obviously one eye doesn't open. I'm not sure if we're going to be on Zoom call with everybody can see this, or if we're going to be strictly audio.
No, so this is going out audio and it's going up on YouTube. So anyone who is listening to this on iTunes or wherever else you're listening, head on over to the YouTube channel and check out the video with Brian so that you can get a handle on what he's talking about.
So that's when the problems happened. It was March 4th of 2011. And from that, I went and had brain surgery in Phoenix, Arizona. I'm an Ohio guy, but yeah, after that, it took about 6 months for me to be able to see well enough to drive again. And have been able to do that, and that's been really life-changing. It really adds a lot of independence to what it is that I do, and it's important. So having said that, I still try to carry on life just as normal as I can, and do everything I can to inspire other people to be able to see their blind spots and to be able to see what they're not seeing.
That's awesome. You and I have so much in common. It's almost scary in that. Well, okay, a couple things. Number one, last year I actually found out that I had a meningioma in my brain and had to have brain surgery to remove that. It didn't affect anything, but the backstory on that is that when I was 21, I had a spinal cord injury, and so paralyzed from the chest down. And again, when you talk about driving, that is such a huge source of independence and to do what you and I do. And so let me just ask there, you said that driving allows you to do what you do. Tell me a little bit about what it is that you actually do.
Well, I'm a speaker, so I don't really need to have the driving to be able to speak, but well, at one point I was in IT sales. So I was information technology sales, and that was from 2011 through, well, I started it well before that, but 2011 through 2016, and all day, and I'd be in and around the city. You know, there would not be a day that I would not be in my car. You know, with COVID and speaking, you know, I don't get into my car. There are days on end where, you know, days in sequence where I don't ever get into my car. So, you know, that's not as important to me right now. But I also have a job where I work at the Ohio School for the Blind. And at the Ohio School for the Blind, I'm in charge of their after-school program. So that's a situation where I need to be at the school for that. So I definitely use the driving with what I do, my job at the school.
Yeah, that's awesome. It's great work. You and I are definitely going to have to chat after we're done here, because there's a lot of different areas that I think about where not only does our work overlap, but our passion overlaps. This is fantastic. So as you're working with you're working with especially kids, students that are blind at the School for the Blind.
Mhm.
What kind of after school program are you working with for them? And what is the message that you're sharing with them, or what is the goal that you're helping them to develop and achieve?
So the after-school program, it's an after-school program. It's really funded by the federal government through the 21st Century Grant. And I am the site coordinator, so I am responsible for making sure the different leaders of the clubs are there to help the kids, and I try to assemble the clubs as well. So there's a CrossFit club, there's a yoga club, there's a cooking club, and one of my favorite clubs of all is the knitting club. So actually, in the knitting club is actually a part of my speech, my keynote speech that I deliver to people when I'm talking about going from blindness to sight to vision. So vision is really at the end where I know now what I'm supposed to be doing. I'm supposed to be serving the students at the School for the Blind. So in this club, these programs that we have, we're helping the students to be able to understand that there is life outside of school, and there's life outside of being blind. So you can do so much with being blind that you never really thought of before. So teaching blind kids how to knit is it's been I'm not a knitter, so I'm not the one leading the club, but in order to help people to know that they can do things like that, it's been life-changing. And that's really the whole goal. The whole idea is to be able to help them see things that they've never seen before. Now, a lot of times when we think about that, we think of negative things, but there's also a lot of positive things that we've never seen before that we can see as well. So that's what I help kids to be able to do.
What you're talking about is so spot on. The fact is that people with disabilities and whoever, and I think this really applies to everybody, that so many times we're focused on either what we can't do or what we don't have, that when we're consumed with that, we don't get anywhere. Once we begin to realize the strengths that we have, the abilities that we have, and the fact that just because we don't do things exactly like everybody else does, doesn't mean that we can't do them. It is, and I guess this is where I think it's important that, yes, we all have a lot in common, and you and I have a lot of overlapping experiences, and yet in that, each of us has a uniqueness, a unique set of abilities and strengths. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Well, that's one of the areas that I talk about in my keynote speech as well. I talk about what makes me unique. And what makes me unique is not the fact that I have one eye open. What makes me unique is my positive personality and how I'm able to share my story with other people to help them to be able to embrace their own personal blindness, because we all have blindness in our lives. But one of the things that I do is I take pictures with people. I do selfies. So, with this time of COVID, I haven't been doing as many of these pictures, but I still like to do that. So I encourage people to wink. They wink at me when they're on video, but and I take a picture of them winking. So the idea is that if they can start to understand that, what makes them unique. So if I can understand what makes me unique, me, and this guy next to me understand what makes him unique, I wonder what makes me unique. That's a whole subject that I really like to get into and like to be able to help people with, because understanding what makes you unique is really where you're going to be able to unlock what, not only your passion, your purpose, but also what it is you should be doing with it. And that's really an important part of the whole thing. So yes, uniqueness is important.
I love it. And let me just say that from my experience in dealing with my spinal cord injury, what I had to learn was that I am still me. My physical condition doesn't define me. And so this is kind of a weird admission, but I'm one of those people that I get inspired by domain names. And so I'm like, oh, what would be a really cool domain name to have? And so I've got a ton of them, and And I'm not smart enough to buy ones that I think like, oh, I'll bet somebody else would buy this. I buy the ones that have something personal that mean to
Yeah,
me.
I'm the same
But
way.
I bought stillrob.com because the
Uh-huh.
idea is that even though I have a spinal cord injury, even though I've got some limitations, the essence of who I am, my uniqueness is still there. And for all of us, no matter where we are, no matter what we're going through, we have something that makes us different than anyone else. My son has a sign up in his room that says, be the best version of you that you can be, because everybody else is already taken.
Right.
So, and in that, not only are we unique, but our uniqueness has its own set of strengths and abilities that are different from everyone else. Is that something that you talk about as well?
Sure. I mean, that's certainly important. And back to your URL comment. I mean, I love that. My URL that I bought that I like the most is brianwith1eye.com.
Yeah, I love it.
There's so many people that don't understand that because they can't see me. But yes, I don't have one eye. Well, my one eye doesn't open, but one eye does. So I focus on the eye that opens. And I am Brian with one eye. Some people say, well, how do you spell your name? Is Brian with an I or Brian with a Y? I tell them I'm Brian with one eye. So
Right.
that's me. Kind of sick humor.
Unfortunately, I've got the exact same thing. So it's beautiful, man.
Yeah. So you were saying about uniqueness and helping people to understand what makes them unique. So yeah, we talk a little bit about that in our talk, but you know, there's a lot that really happens more in regards to understanding your not your always your uniqueness, but also what makes you special. And that's uniqueness, but what it is that you have from a perspective of blind spots. So I talk about blind spots all the time, and helping people to understand that their blind spots matter, and it matters to understand what they are. Blind spots aren't always negative. So blind spots can also be the positive things that you overlook. You don't realize. I have a letter that I share during my keynotes, and I talk to people about the letter I received from my daughter and how she showed me my blind spots. She showed me what I meant to her, and that has been one of the best things that comes out of the keynote is to have people understand. Well, blind spots aren't always negative, and I do have something valuable to offer the world.
You know, I think about it when I'm driving. I have a big full-size van that I drive, and the two posts on either side of the windshield, that basically separate the windshield from the driver's window and the passenger window. Sometimes when I'm pulling out, I've got to kind of, like look around those to make sure those are blind spots. That's an area that I can't see. However, it's a necessary area because it's a safety issue. Without that post there, the roof would collapse or whatever the situation is. And so I'm not sure if that exactly fits in with your concept, but to me, it's the idea that there are sometimes areas that we can't see, and that's okay. We have to work around those, but we need to be aware of them. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, it absolutely does. I mean, I talk a lot about blind spots when I'm driving in my talk. So I talk to people about how the person in my passenger seat, when I'm driving, the person in my passenger seat, they see my blind spots. They see what I don't see. So in life, in your job, in your personal life, who is seeing your blind spots? So that's definitely a part of transitioning from the physical blind spots to the actual mental or spiritual or whatever blind spots.
Yeah, I love it. And the other part of that you're talking about is the openness about having deficits, having blind spots, being able to say, yes, I am unique, I am amazing, I am all of these things, and even though I have got these blind spots, and I'm open when someone tells me about something that I'm missing. It's a learning experience. It's not a physical accusation, like, I mean, I would imagine for you, when they're telling you about something that you're not seeing, be like, well, of course I can't, you couldn't defend yourself and say like, well, of course I can't see that. I only have one eye. Like, what's wrong with you? Are you trying to put me down because I only have one eye and I can't see that? Or is it a matter of like, thank you for making me aware of what is, you know, of the things that I am not able to see it from my perspective.
Yeah.
Does that make any sense at all to you?
Yeah. So you're hitting on all the different parts of my talk. So in the talk, in the speech, you know, the program, I go through not only blindness to sight to vision, but also there's a piece in there where I talk about awareness. And awareness comes from, you know, knowing who you are and knowing how the world is perceiving you, but also the acceptance part, from awareness to acceptance, accepting what's happened, you know, and not that it's happened to you, but it's happened for you. So, you know, I tell people all the time that, you know, what has happened to me is a gift from God, that, you know, the gift is that I don't see like everybody else. I see things that you don't see, but that's actually a good thing. So, you know, having people to understand that is important. But then also, when you talk about awareness, you know, I use the Johari window. The Johari window is a tool created for self-awareness back in 1955 by two British psychologists.
Joe and Harry.
Yeah, Joe and Harry, right?
Right, yeah.
Exactly, you know it.
Exactly.
So you have things you see and things that you don't see, but then you also have things that other people see and other people don't see. So you have your peak area, your peak presence, where you're really on fire, things are going well, where you have things that you see and things that other people see. That's the best area to be in. But then you also have those spots where you have blind spots, where, you know, you don't see them, but other people do. And there's your hidden area, and there's your unknown area. So really some important parts to help people with their self-awareness.
Yeah, it's so important to have that self-awareness. And really, one of the things that I see going on, and I'd be interested to get your feedback on this, people have this kind of expectation of perfection, and they look around and they see somebody else whose life they appear to have it all together, or they don't have whatever it is that I have going on. Listen, right now I'm going through some health issues, and it's a really difficult time because I can turn inward and I begin to look at all of the problems that I face that other people don't face and that other people aren't even aware of. And in that, it really closes your world down, right, to become just about me and my issues and my difficulties, as opposed to realizing, like, listen, it is very likely that everybody is going through something that other people don't know about. And we all have our personal struggles. We all have our personal difficulties. And by sharing that, it is not burdening other people to share what we're going through. B, it is not demeaning to myself to say, yeah, I am having struggles. And C, it is an opportunity for other people to support and to build in. And then D, it makes you a resource that someone says, you know what, I'm going through a rough time, and I remember who shared with me and who I was able to support, and now I can turn to them and they can be a support to me. What does that say to you?
Well, you're talking about some more stuff that I talk about when it comes to comparing yourself, you know, and everybody has something going on in their life. Everybody does. And we all have blindness in our lives. But back to my letter, from my daughter, my 13-year-old daughter at the time, she showed me that, you know, other people's dads are great. She went into this Father's Day letter back in 2011. She said, you know, other people's dads are great. I mean, they're younger than you and they're sportier and they're funnier, but you've got something that they don't have. Bravery. Even after everything you've been through. And she went into this whole thing about how I was having a positive impact on her, because I was her dad. I just needed to be her dad. So don't compare yourself to other people. That's not who I want. I don't want other people. I want you. You're my dad. And if we focus on our vision, if we focus on where we're going, our preferred state, then we won't worry about how other people are doing.
And that is beautiful. I understand a little bit about what you're going through, because my injury occurred before I was married and before we had kids. And that was a real struggle for me to talk about having kids and what kind of dad am I going to be? And just like you said, I was comparing myself to all the other dads and saying, I'm not going to be a dad like every other dad. But my wife eventually asked me, what is it that a dad does? A dad loves his kids no matter what. A dad teaches his kids what's right and what's wrong. And a dad is there when his kids need them. And those are all things that you can do with, with whatever my physical limitations are. And so, yeah, having that understanding of what a dad is, my kids now know that a dad is also someone who has an absolutely horrific sense of humor and makes all kinds of jokes that cause them to roll their eyes and just mutter under their breath. But like, that's what we do, because that's what we're good at.
Right, exactly.
So you keep talking about, you have 3 steps of going from blindness to sight to vision.
Yeah.
Can you tell me just a little bit more about that? And then like, what happens when you arrive at vision? So I'm really good at asking like 8-part questions.
Yeah. So blindness to sight to vision is the process that I went through, and I think a lot of people go through as well in different phases of their life. Blind, I was blind. Sight is when I started to see. So blind, there's more than just being blind. So I didn't see what I was. I didn't see how I was having an effect on other people. But when sight was when I started to begin to understand my blind spots, and I began to see through them. Vision is where it all starts to come together, and you're able to share your vision with someone else. So vision is your preferred state. It's your preferred future. So 8 years ago, well, now 9 years ago, 9.5 years ago, when I went blind, I had to realize that I was blind. I had to accept that I was blind. But then now to where I am now, with the vision that I have to be able to help other people. So I help other people to embrace their own personal blindness to achieve a greater vision for their lives. That's what I do. So that vision has stayed with me the entire time, and I've just continued to march forward to reach that vision. But I had to set those milestones, those goals, short goals along the way in order to get there. So yeah, I mean, the vision is a critically important part to the whole process.
That's awesome, man. So tell me then a little bit about, who are you talking to when you're going out? Is it specifically designed for a certain audience? Is this something that like everybody needs to hear? And of course, I feel like, yeah, the message that you're sharing is something that everybody needs to hear, but what's your target audience?
Well, my target audience for the last 2 years, I've been speaking with intellectually and developmentally disabled community. So not so much the actual disabled community, but the actual people that support them. So there's direct support providers. There are others that are in the intellectual and developmental disability world all across the nation. So I've been speaking with the people in Pennsylvania, Texas, Ohio, Illinois. So I'm going to have conversations here in the next few months with Missouri and Oregon and Kansas next year. So there's lots of different organizations spread all over that help to support those, whether they're autistic or whatever the case may be. But it's important to be able to identify with them, so they identify with me from a perspective of an overcomer and somebody that's made something out of his life that most people would not have viewed as there being something tangible there, something of value. But I perceive myself as having high value, and hopefully other people see that as well.
Hey, Brian, you and I on so many levels are kindred spirits. So this has been absolutely fantastic. Listen, if people are looking to get a hold of you, where can they find you on the web?
Really, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Those 4. I'm at A Radical Vision. So A Radical Vision, ARADICILVISON. So a Radical Vision, and they're all of them are the same. So that's there. And I also have a Podia website, which it's a membership site. I can give that to you as well. That's not quite as simple, but still it's out there.
Yeah, no problem. So what I'll do is I will put a link to all of your social media stuff and all of your website, and then the other website that you've got, your Podia website. I can put a link to that right in the show notes as well, so that folks can get right in there and check you out. Because I would encourage them to do that. What you're doing is fantastic.
Well, thank you, Rob. I appreciate you.
Yeah. So it is now time for my favorite part of the show, which we have established you are indeed smart. I have learned from you. I think my audience has learned from you. It's time to show your peopleness, and it's time for 3 questions to establish your humanity. Are you ready for this?
I'm ready.
Okay. So do you have a favorite pair of shoes?
Yes, I do have a favorite pair of shoes. They're usually the ones that I have on. But that's a great question. So when I'm running, my running shoes are my favorite pair of shoes. When I'm speaking, I have a certain pair of shoes that I wear when I'm speaking. So those are my favorite pair of shoes. I would say it's the pair that I have on.
Okay. And I think what I'm hearing you say in that is that your shoes are more about being a tool that equips you to do whatever it is that you are trying to do at that point in time. Is that?
Yes, absolutely.
Right. Beautiful. So you're viewing shoes as tools rather than as fashion statements. I like it. Do you think that you are like your parents at all?
I hope I am. I definitely hope I am. My mom's 91. She's a great person, great, just loves her family. She has, 25 grandkids and 30 some great grandkids. She has a few great grandkids. So she's all about family, and I'm really all about family as well. So from that perspective, I'm definitely a lot like my mom. If I could say that I'm like my dad, I mean, that would be phenomenal. But my dad passed away about 5 years ago. And he was a great guy, and just had so much life in him, and so much to offer the world. And he loved to hear me speak. He loved to hear any of his kids, orate, from a stage, because there were a few of us that did that, whether it be at a graduation speech or whatever. So he loved to hear us speak, and I would say that from that point of view, I'm definitely like my dad, because that was something he loved to hear, loved to see. So
Fantastic. It's a fitting testimony to how amazing your parents are. And I think, I don't know I think it was Bill Cosby that talked about when he was like 5 years old, his dad knew everything. And then when he was 15 years old, his dad knew nothing. And he spent the rest of his life getting closer and closer to that 5-year-old understanding that his dad was not nearly as dumb as he originally gave him credit for. All right. So last question. And that is, if I end up coming out to where you are in Columbus, and this is after COVID has passed, and you're taking me to somewhere to get the taste of Columbus, we're going out to eat. What is the restaurant of choice that you would say this is the place that we need to go so that you can experience Ohio and this area?
Well, I mean, I would go to someplace local. I live in Hilliard, which is on the west side of Columbus. And there are probably spots in Columbus that I could recommend, or take you to. But the place in Hilliard that I would have you go to is the Starliner Diner. And Starliner Diner has a mix of food. I mean, it's Cuban in some cases, it's American in others, but I mean, it's just, it's really good. It's a good buffet. It's not a buffet. It's a really good, what do I want to say, brunch place.
Okay.
So, and lunch and dinner as well. So yeah, I would say Starliner Diner.
Beautiful. Hey, Brian, thank you so much for being a good sport. I appreciate you being on the show today. For all my listeners, go check out the show notes. Check out Brian. He is phenomenal. And I will remind you, as always, that when you stop learning, you stop living. Have a great day, everybody.
Thanks for having me.